Have you ever felt that strange restlessness inside you? Like your soul is whispering, something is about to change. Nothing outside may look different, yet deep within you sense a quiet shift. Life often doesn't announce new chapters with loud drums, it turns the page softly. As Gaur Gopal often reminds us, growth is subtle before it becomes visible. Today, let us explore 7 powerful signs that your life is entering a new chapter. A chapter that may feel uncomfortable now, but is designed to elevate you. There comes a moment in life when the things that once brought comfort, excitement, and a sense of belonging quietly lose their meaning. Activities you once looked forward to begin to feel repetitive. Conversations that used to energize you now drain you. And familiar environments no longer feel like home. This shift can be unsettling, even frightening, because we often mistake familiarity for stability. When something that once felt right starts feeling wrong, the instinct is to resist the change and question ourselves. However, this experience is not a sign of confusion or ingratitude. It is one of the clearest indicators of inner growth taking place. As you evolve, your inner values change before your external life does. Your mind and heart begin to seek depth over distraction, purpose over routine, and meaning over comfort. What once satisfied you was aligned with an earlier version of yourself, a version that needed those experiences at that time. But growth naturally demands expansion, and expansion requires release. Holding on to outdated habits, roles, or relationships can feel safe, yet it slowly creates a sense of emotional heaviness. You may find yourself going through the motions, participating without presence, smiling without joy. This emotional dissonance is your inner self, signaling that you are outgrowing the life you once built. Letting go is rarely dramatic. It often happens quietly, through a gradual loss of interest or an unexplainable sense of restlessness. You may notice that certain conversations feel repetitive, that old goals no longer inspire motivation, or that achievements you once chased now feel hollow. This does not diminish the value of your past. It simply means that your present self requires something more aligned. Growth does not invalidate where you came from. It honors it by moving beyond it. Many people struggle at this stage because they associate consistency with loyalty and change with failure. They fear that letting go means giving up, disappointing others, or betraying the person they used to be. In reality, clinging to what no longer fits is far more damaging than releasing it. When you force yourself to remain in spaces that no longer resonate, you suppress your authentic growth. Over time, this suppression manifests as frustration, emotional fatigue, or a persistent sense that something is missing, even when everything appears fine on the surface. There is also an important emotional maturity that develops during this phase. You begin to understand that not everything you release was bad, and not everything you move toward must be perfect. Some experiences serve their purpose by teaching discipline, resilience, or self-awareness. Others helped you understand your boundaries and preferences. Their role was temporary, and acknowledging that allows you to let go with gratitude rather than resentment. Growth becomes less about rejection and more about realignment. This phase often requires courage because the next step is rarely clear. You may not yet know what will replace what you are leaving behind. The uncertainty can feel uncomfortable, but it is a necessary space for transformation. Just as nature clears old growth to allow new life to emerge, your inner world creates emptiness so that something more meaningful can enter. That emptiness is not a void, it is preparation. When you begin to trust this process, you stop forcing enthusiasm where it no longer exists. You give yourself permission to change without guilt and to evolve without explanation. You recognize that life is not asking you to abandon your past, but to stop living in it. What once felt right did its job by shaping who you are today. Now your awareness is expanding, your needs are deepening, and your direction is shifting. This quiet detachment is not an ending. It is the subtle beginning of a more aligned, intentional, and fulfilling phase of life. There are periods in life when emotional discomfort appears without a clear reason, leaving you feeling unsettled even when everything seems fine on the surface. You may experience sudden waves of sadness, irritation, or mental exhaustion that do not align with your circumstances. This inner conflict can be confusing because it lacks a visible cause, yet it feels deeply real. Many people try to suppress these emotions or distract themselves, assuming something is wrong with them. In truth, this discomfort is often a sign that your inner world is reorganizing itself in preparation for growth. Emotional discomfort emerges when your existing mindset, beliefs, or lifestyle no longer match your evolving awareness. Your inner self begins to challenge what you once accepted without question. Values you previously ignored now demand attention, and compromises you once tolerated begin to feel unbearable. This internal tension is not meant to punish you, it is meant to awaken you. Growth requires an honest confrontation with what is misaligned, and that confrontation naturally brings emotional unease. During this phase, you may feel torn between staying the same and moving forward. One part of you craves familiarity and predictability, while another part longs for authenticity and expansion. This internal division can lead to overthinking, mood swings, and a sense of emotional fatigue. You may question your decisions, doubt your progress, or feel impatient with yourself. Rather than viewing this as instability, it is more accurate to see it as transition. Just as muscles ache when they are strengthening, emotional discomfort arises when your inner capacity is expanding. This stage often brings heightened sensitivity. Small situations may trigger stronger reactions than before, and you may feel overwhelmed by environments or conversations that once felt manageable. This sensitivity is not weakness, it is awareness sharpening. As you become more conscious of your emotional needs, your tolerance for misalignment decreases. What you once ignored now feels heavy because your inner standards have changed. Emotional discomfort is the result of your system refusing to return to unconscious patterns. Another challenging aspect of this phase is the loss of emotional certainty. You may no longer feel confident about what you want or where you are headed. Goals that once felt clear now seem distant, and motivation may fluctuate. This can create anxiety, especially in a world that values clarity and constant progress. However, emotional uncertainty is often a necessary pause. It creates space for reflection, forcing you to reevaluate not just what you are doing, but why you are doing it. Without this pause, growth remains superficial. People often attempt to escape this discomfort by seeking quick solutions, external validation, or constant distraction. While these methods may offer temporary relief, they delay the deeper transformation taking place. Emotional discomfort requires presence, not avoidance. When you allow yourself to sit with it, patterns begin to emerge. You start recognizing unresolved emotions, unexpressed desires, and limiting beliefs that no longer serve you. This awareness is the foundation of meaningful change. This internal conflict also strengthens emotional intelligence. You learn to observe your emotions rather than react impulsively to them. You begin to understand that discomfort is not a signal to stop, but a signal to listen. Through this process, resilience develops naturally. You gain the ability to remain grounded even when clarity is absent, trusting that understanding will arrive in its own time. Emotional growth is rarely comfortable, but it is always purposeful. As this phase progresses, you may notice a gradual shift. The discomfort does not vanish instantly, but it becomes more manageable. You feel more aligned with yourself, even without complete answers. Emotional stability is no longer dependent on external conditions, but rooted in self-awareness. This is how inner conflict transforms into inner strength. What once felt like confusion reveals itself as preparation for a more authentic and emotionally grounded version of yourself. At certain stages of life, the desire for solitude begins to grow naturally, not as an escape from people, but as a deeper pull towards self-connection. You may notice that social interactions, which once felt stimulating, now feel overwhelming, and moments of quiet bring a sense of relief rather than emptiness. This shift is often misunderstood, both by oneself and by others, as withdrawal or emotional distance. In reality, it reflects an internal recalibration, where the mind and emotions seek space to process change, reflect on experiences, and restore balance. Solitude during this phase becomes less about being alone and more about being present with yourself. The constant noise of opinions, expectations, and external influence gradually loses its appeal. You begin to recognize how much mental energy is consumed by social validation and how little time is spent listening to your own thoughts. Choosing solitude allows you to step out of that noise and observe your life with clarity. It is in these quiet moments that unfiltered truths surface, helping you understand what truly matters to you beyond social conditioning. As self-awareness deepens, your tolerance for superficial interactions often decreases. Small talk may feel draining, and relationships that lack depth or authenticity may feel exhausting. This does not mean you value people less, it means you value meaningful connection more. Solitude helps refine your emotional boundaries, teaching you when to engage and when to step back. You begin to realize that being constantly available to others often comes at the cost of being unavailable to yourself. This phase also allows emotional healing to take place. When life is constantly busy, unresolved emotions are easily buried beneath distractions. Solitude removes those distractions and creates space for honest self-examination. Old memories, unprocessed feelings, and long-ignored desires may surface. While this can feel uncomfortable initially, it is a necessary process. Emotional clarity cannot emerge without first acknowledging what has been suppressed. Solitude provides a safe environment for this internal dialogue to unfold. There is also a strengthening of inner independence that develops through intentional solitude. You begin to rely less on external affirmation and more on internal alignment. Decisions feel more intentional because they are guided by personal values rather than social pressure. This independence is not isolation, it is emotional maturity. You learn that fulfillment does not require constant company, and confidence does not require constant approval. During this period, creativity and insight often increase. With fewer external interruptions, the mind becomes more reflective and intuitive. Ideas flow more freely. Solutions to long-standing problems become clearer, and intuition becomes more reliable. Solitude allows you to observe patterns in your life, recognize recurring challenges, and understand your role in them. This level of insight is difficult to access when attention is constantly fragmented. It is important to note that this need for solitude is not permanent. It is a phase that serves a purpose. Just as muscles require rest after exertion, the mind requires stillness after growth. Solitude restores emotional energy and prepares you to re-engage with the world from a stronger, more centered place. When this phase is respected rather than resisted, it leads to healthier relationships and more intentional social engagement in the future. As comfort with solitude grows, fear of being alone diminishes. You no longer seek people to fill a void, but to share a sense of completeness. The relationship with yourself becomes more stable, grounded, and compassionate. This inner stability changes how you interact with the world. Solitude stops feeling like absence and begins to feel like alignment, a quiet yet powerful indicator that your life is restructuring itself from the inside out. There comes a time when certain relationships begin to change without any dramatic conflict or obvious reason. Conversations become less frequent, shared interests slowly dissolve, and the emotional connection that once felt natural begins to fade. This shift can feel confusing because nothing appears outwardly wrong, yet the bond no longer holds the same depth. Many people struggle with this phase, believing that effort alone should preserve every relationship. However, not all distance is a failure. Sometimes it is a natural result of personal growth and evolving priorities. As individuals change, their values, perspectives, and emotional needs evolve as well. Relationships that were formed around older versions of yourself may no longer align with who you are becoming. What once felt supportive can begin to feel limiting, and what once felt familiar may start to feel emotionally disconnected. This does not negate the importance of those relationships. It simply reflects that their role in your life is shifting. Growth often alters the dynamics of connection before it alters circumstances. This stage can be emotionally challenging because it requires acceptance rather than action. There is often a temptation to force conversations, revive old patterns, or hold on to connections out of loyalty or fear of loss. Yet forced closeness rarely restores genuine connection. When relationships are meant to evolve or end, resistance only creates emotional strain. Allowing distance to occur naturally requires trust in the process and confidence in your own growth. Another layer of difficulty comes from the emotional attachments tied to shared history. Memories, experiences, and emotional investments can make it hard to accept that someone who once felt essential is no longer as present. The mind often clings to the past, hoping to recreate what once was. However, relationships are living entities shaped by mutual growth and alignment. When that alignment fades, the chain changes regardless of history. This phase also brings an important lesson in emotional discernment. You begin to understand that not every relationship is meant to last forever, and that permanence is not a measure of value. Some connections exist to teach, support, or guide you through a specific phase of life. Once that purpose is fulfilled, the relationship naturally transitions. Recognizing this allows you to release resentment and replace it with gratitude for what was shared. As relationships fade, emotional space is created. This space can feel uncomfortable at first, especially if those connections once provided a sense of identity or belonging. Yet this openness is necessary for new, more aligned relationships to enter your life. Growth often requires letting go of familiar dynamics to make room for healthier and more fulfilling connections. Holding on to outdated relationships can unintentionally block this process. This experience also deepens emotional maturity. You learn to separate self-worth from social attachment and understand that distance does not always mean rejection. Sometimes it simply reflects different life directions. This understanding fosters compassion, both for yourself and for others. You begin to appreciate relationships without needing to possess them, allowing connections to exist in their natural form rather than forcing them into permanence. As acceptance grows, emotional resistance softens. The fading of certain relationships no longer feels like abandonment, but like a quiet acknowledgement of change. You carry the lessons, not the attachment, forward. This shift strengthens emotional resilience and clarity, allowing you to move through life with less fear of loss and more trust in an alignment. Relationships that remain are no longer maintained by obligation, but by mutual respect, growth, and authenticity. There comes a phase in life when a persistent inner voice begins to question the direction you are moving in. The routines you once followed without hesitation now feel restrictive, and the path that once seemed secure starts to feel misaligned. This urge to change your life direction is rarely sudden. It builds gradually through moments of dissatisfaction, quiet frustration, and a growing sense that your potential is being underutilized. It often appears even when external circumstances suggest stability, which can make the feeling difficult to justify or explain to others. This internal call for change is rooted in self-awareness. As your understanding of yourself deepens, your definition of success begins to shift. Achievements that once brought validation may no longer bring fulfillment, and goals shaped by external expectations lose their appeal. You start to realize that progress without purpose feels empty. This realization can be unsettling, especially if you have invested years of effort into a particular path. Yet this discomfort is not a sign of failure. It is evidence that your inner standards have evolved. During this phase, uncertainty becomes a constant companion. You may feel drawn towards something new without being able to clearly define what it is. The absence of clarity can create anxiety, particularly in a culture that emphasizes certainty and long-term planning. However, meaningful change rarely begins with complete understanding. It often starts with a feeling, a sense that continuing in the same direction would mean ignoring your authentic self. Learning to respect this intuition is an essential part of personal growth. The urge to change direction also brings a reevaluation of risk. What once seemed risky now feels necessary, while what once felt safe begins to feel limiting. You may find yourself questioning whether security without satisfaction is truly security at all. This shift in perspective reflects emotional maturity, as you begin to prioritize long-term fulfillment over short-term comfort. Change in this context is not about impulsiveness, but about alignment. There is often resistance during this stage, both internally and externally. Internally, fear of the unknown can create self-doubt and hesitation. Externally, well-meaning advice from others may discourage deviation from a conventional path. Navigating this resistance requires confidence in your self-awareness. It involves understanding that while advice can be valuable, no one else fully experiences your inner reality. Respecting your own insights becomes an act of self-trust. This phase also demands patience. Change in direction does not always mean immediate action. Sometimes it requires learning, skill building, or gradual transition. Rushing the process can create unnecessary pressure, while allowing yourself time fosters clarity and confidence. The urge to change is not a demand for instant results, but an invitation to explore new possibilities with intention. As you engage with this process, a renewed sense of energy often emerges. Even without certainty, the idea of moving towards something more meaningful creates motivation. You may begin to feel more engaged with learning, more curious about opportunities, and more open to growth. This energy is a sign that you are reconnecting with your authentic aspirations rather than simply fulfilling expectations. Over time, the urge to change direction becomes less about escaping dissatisfaction and more about moving toward purpose. Decisions become guided by values rather than fear, and progress feels internally rewarding rather than externally driven. This shift reshapes how you view your life path, transforming uncertainty into possibility and hesitation into intentional movement toward a more aligned future. There is a noticeable shift that occurs when awareness begins to deepen and self-reflection becomes a natural part of daily life. You start observing your thoughts, reactions, and patterns with greater clarity. Rather than moving through life on autopilot, situations that once triggered automatic responses now invite pause and understanding. This heightened awareness can feel intense at first, as it brings previously unnoticed behaviors and beliefs into focus. Yet this discomfort serves a purpose, creating an opportunity for conscious growth. As self-reflection increases, you begin to recognize recurring patterns in your life. Certain challenges, relationships, or emotional reactions appear repeatedly, prompting you to question their origin. Instead of attributing these patterns solely to external circumstances, you start examining your own role in shaping them. This shift from blame to responsibility is a defining aspect of maturity. It empowers you to change what you can influence rather than feeling controlled by events beyond your reach. This process often reveals limiting beliefs that have quietly guided your decisions for years. Ideas about what you deserve, what you are capable of, or what is considered realistic begin to surface. Many of these beliefs were formed unconsciously through past experiences or social conditioning. Increased awareness allows you to question their validity. You start to ask whether these beliefs still serve you or whether they restrict your growth. This questioning marks the beginning of intentional transformation. Self-reflection also deepens emotional understanding. You become more aware of why certain situations provoke strong reactions and why certain emotions are difficult to process. Instead of suppressing feelings or reacting impulsively, you learn to observe them with curiosity. This observation creates emotional distance without detachment, allowing you to respond thoughtfully rather than react instinctively. Emotional intelligence develops through this practice, strengthening your ability to navigate complex situations with composure. Another significant aspect of increased awareness is the recognition of personal values. You begin to identify what truly matters to you beyond societal expectations or external validation. Decisions become more intentional as they are filtered through these values. This clarity reduces internal conflict as actions align more closely with beliefs. Life begins to feel less scattered and more purposeful, even when challenges arise. This stage of awareness often brings a sense of accountability. You stop waiting for circumstances or people to change and instead focus on your own choices and responses. This does not mean taking responsibility for everything that happens, but rather acknowledging your power within each situation. This mindset shift fosters resilience. As you realize that growth is possible regardless of external conditions, with increased self-reflection, patience also develops. You become more understanding of your own learning process and less critical of imperfections. Mistakes are viewed as information rather than failures. This compassionate perspective supports sustainable growth, allowing progress to unfold naturally rather than through self-imposed pressure. As awareness continues to expand, a quiet confidence begins to emerge. You trust your perceptions, respect your boundaries, and approach life with greater intentionality. While uncertainty may still exist, it no longer feels overwhelming. Awareness becomes a grounding force, guiding decisions and shaping behavior with clarity and purpose. This internal shift reflects a deeper alignment between who you are and how you live, signaling meaningful personal evolution in progress. There is a distinct stage in personal growth when certainty disappears, yet a quiet sense of trust takes its place. You may not have clear answers about where life is heading, and familiar structures may no longer feel reliable. Plans shift, expectations dissolve, and the future appears indeed. Under normal circumstances, this level of uncertainty would provoke anxiety and resistance. However, during this phase, something changes internally. Despite the lack of control, you experience a subtle confidence that you will be able to navigate whatever unfolds. This trust does not emerge from blind optimism or external reassurance. It develops through experience. After facing challenges, disappointments, and moments of doubt, you begin to realize that you have survived more than you once believed possible. This realization reshapes your relationship with fear. Fear may still arise, but it no longer dominates your decisions. You understand that discomfort is not a sign of failure, but a natural part of growth. This awareness allows you to move forward even when clarity is absent. As faith strengthens, your need to control outcomes diminishes. You stop obsessively predicting results or demanding certainty before taking action. Instead, you focus on what you can influence in the present moment. This shift reduces mental strain and creates emotional balance. You begin to accept that not every step needs to be planned and that progress can occur through adaptability rather than rigid structure. Trust becomes a stabilizing force in the midst of unpredictability. This phase also alters how you interpret setbacks. Challenges are no longer viewed as evidence that you are on the wrong path, but as necessary components of development. When obstacles arise, you respond with reflect, question rather than panic. You ask what the experience is teaching you rather than why it is happening to you. This mindset fosters resilience and encourages continuous learning, even during difficult transitions. Another noticeable change is the deepening of inner alignment. Decisions are guided less by external validation and more by internal conviction. You may not be able to justify your choices logically to others, yet they feel right to you. This self-trust is rooted in self-awareness, not arrogance. It reflects an understanding that your journey is unique and cannot always be measured by conventional standards. Acting from this place creates a sense of integrity and inner peace. Faith in uncertainty also encourages patience. You become more comfortable with gradual progress and delayed outcomes. Instead of rushing toward immediate results, you allow processes to unfold organically. This patience reduces pressure and allows growth to occur sustainably. You recognize that meaningful change often requires time and that forcing outcomes can disrupt natural development. Emotionally, this phase brings a sense of calm determination. You remain engaged with your goals while accepting that the path may evolve. You are open to redirection without feeling defeated. This flexibility enhances creativity and problem solving, as you are no longer confined by rigid expectations. Life becomes less about reaching a predetermined destination and more about responding thoughtfully to each stage of the journey. Through this growing faith, uncertainty transforms from a source of fear into a space of possibility. You no longer view the unknown as something to avoid, but as an invitation to grow. This shift strengthens emotional resilience and nurtures a deeper connection to yourself. Trust becomes an internal anchor, allowing you to move forward with confidence even when the future remains undefined. If you see these signs in your life, don't panic, celebrate. A new chapter is not meant to look familiar, it is meant to make you better. Trust the pauses, trust the endings, trust yourself. As Gaur Gopal beautifully teaches us, life doesn't happen to you, it happens for you. Turn the page with courage. Your next chapter is waiting, and it needs the stronger, wiser version of you. Thank you.